How do we inspire a better future for horses? In Equilogue, the podcast from International Equine Professionals, we explore the many facets of the horse world, supporting professionals, bridging perspectives, asking questions, advocating for change.
Hi everyone, welcome to the first Equilogue. I'm Irene Perrett.
And I'm Kate Thornton. So today we're really happy to be joined by Naomi Nyamudoka, who is one of our IEP members. Naomi's based in Perthshire. She's an equine facilitated psychotherapist, and Naomi has a very special team that she works with, which is her herd of equines, which can't think of anything better. And her work focuses on helping to support people over the age of 16 with their mental health. But her specialisms are, perhaps I should pass this over to you, Naomi, but specializes in neurodivergence and trauma. So hi, Naomi.
Hello.
Hi, Naomi.
Hello.
Lovely to have you with us. I mean, that's a very, in a nutshell, introduction to you and what you do. But if I can pass over to you, really, and ask you to expand on that and tell us a bit about what you do, what your business is, because obviously you are self-employed, and that's what this is about. So.
Yes, absolutely. So, I work with my team at my herd of 5 horses in rural Perthshire, and I'm an equine facilitated psychotherapist. And as you say, I specialise in working with neurodivergence. So I'm autistic myself, and I work with primarily other autistic and ADHD individuals, and also those that have experienced trauma. So I work both with the horses in the field, in person, but I also work online as well. And often a lot of the equine stuff comes up online. So even if we're not in the field with the horses show up in various ways in the work online. So I trained as a psychotherapist first, back in, when did I qualify? 2017. Yeah, qualified in 2017. And then I added on the equine facilitated work. So I had always wanted to do the work with the horses. That was like my dream. And yeah, I trained. I ended up doing 2 kind of trainings, but anyway, I trained and added that on to be able to offer that to clients as well.
That sounds brilliant, Naomi. I'm interested in what motivated you to become self-employed. Was it because it felt more comfortable working independently, or was there just not that niche? Did you feel that there was a niche that needed exploring?
That's a really good question. Initially, when I qualified, I started in private practice as well as working with a women's charity. So I did both for a while. So I was employed and had my private practice. For me, having the private practice allowed me more flexibility with the hours that I worked. Also, unfortunately, in the therapy community, therapists are generally underpaid in employed roles. So a lot of therapists are working for not much above minimum wage for what they're doing. And given that it's quite extensive training and very costly to become a therapist, it can be quite unfair. I didn't experience that hugely, I must say, with the charity I worked with. They were fantastic. But for me, having that ability to organize my own diary, to be able to be flexible with clients was really important to me. So at one point I had to go on maternity leave, and it just kind of happened that I then became completely self-employed after that. And it's worked really well.
I was going to ask that actually, the kind of crossover because when you decide that is your dream to be self-employed, but obviously there's that point where you think, well, I don't have the client base yet. I can't do that entirely, so I've got this other source of employment. And I was going to ask how long you were doing the 2 for, but obviously, yeah, your maternity leave kind of influenced that greatly.
So it was about, I think it was about, I want to say year and a half, 2 years, that I was kind of doing both. But I also found I was working part-time, and a lot of neurodivergent and other autistic individuals find this a lot. So most self-employed people that I meet are autistic or ADHD. We don't tend to do quite so well in employed situations because we can't control the environment. And I don't mean that in like a kind of power controlling way, but more an environmental way. So like with equines, they need to be in the right environment in order to thrive. Autistic and ADHD individuals also really need the same. We're not quite as adaptable as neurotypical people. So being able to have our own routine, being able to control the lighting, being able to control the smells and in the environment, like really simple things like that can make a massive amount of difference. So that really helped me too. So rather than having to go into social situations, going into, like an office environment, it didn't suit me well. It kind of cost me, I was more exhausted by the end of the day. So now I can, see my clients, I can kind of regulate myself in between, I can do what I need, and it really flows a lot better.
Super. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. You've talked a little bit about the positives, which sound really, really great.
Yeah.
There are two things. One is, you say you were on maternity leave, so you have a child now.
Yeah, well, I have two, yes.
Yes. So it's managing, it's managing having a family, running a family successfully, and running your business.
Yeah.
So that's maybe something it'd be nice to just explore a little bit more.
Yes, certainly it is a balance. I think with the work that I do, it's not so easy to cancel. If one of my kids is unwell, then it's more challenging to rearrange. So thankfully, I have a partner, and he's fantastic, and he's also self-employed, or was self-employed for a long time. So we were able to kind of pick up that without it impacting too much on my work. Because when you're working with people who have experienced trauma, who are experiencing mental health issues, it's really important that you can show up when you say that you're going to show up. People are really relying on that. So that's not been so easy of being able to be flexible. I've got to say, one of the hardest things is this time of year when the clocks change. So I work part-time hours of seeing clients. I would say full-time with the horse care as well. But the 3 days that I actively see clients, it becomes much more condensed when the clocks change, because I've got to get the horse care done earlier in the day, which means that I lose out on an extra hour of either having clients at the field or seeing online clients. So that can be really, really challenging to fit in with, childcare and everything else.
So what sort of working routine have you developed that you found has worked for you?
Yeah. So when I first started doing the equine facilitated work alongside the online work, I had in my head, right, I'm going to have certain days that I'm going to do the online work, certain days I'm going to do the in-person work. It's not worked out like that. I do have one day that I keep just for online clients, but I don't live too far away. I don't live on site with my horses, but I don't live too far away. It's only like 5-minute cycle. So that helps. But I find that, in the mornings I have to go and do, an hour of care with the horses. They live on a track system, so they need, fed, they need the hay topped up morning and afternoon. So that's an hour at the beginning of the day and an hour at the end of the day. So then everything else has to work in around that. So say I am doing the school run, do the school run first, then get to the horses just after 9. Then my first client usually starts about 10 at the field. The other thing that's really important for me is, and for the herd, is giving you enough time in between sessions. So I don't go straight from one session with a client straight into another session. The herds need a break. They need, just some time that they can just be themselves. Although I must say that I don't I don't put halters on them. They're not asked to participate in any way. We move into their space, and it's all done with consent and choice. So it's not that they are moved or, away from their herd mates or food or water at any time. They're in their own space at all times. But I also need time to kind of just regulate again, just kind of process everything that's happened with that client and get into a space where I'm ready for another client. So there's gaps in between the clients. And then again, at the end of the day, I've got to leave enough time and light to make sure that I've got enough time to get all the rest of the horse gear done before I finish.
So with the field of work that you're in, I would imagine that there's a degree of your work that involves paperwork and administration in terms of, I don't know, what risk assessments and client records and feedback and things like that. I'm just curious, on a personal level, how do you feel about doing paperwork? Because I know myself that actually gets me quite anxious. That part of my work makes me quite anxious, and I don't. So how do you cope with that?
I don't love it. And there's certain paperwork that I have to do. So there's risk assessments, there's written risk assessments and stuff that I provide for my insurance. But that's a kind of one-off, that's kind of reviewed every year. Or if something changes. On a daily basis, there's not so much paperwork. If I am somebody that I don't tend to make a lot of notes, with the way that my brain works, if I make notes, that then becomes all I remember about the session. Okay. And I find that really unhelpful. So usually I will make, one or two notes if there's something, really pertinent. If there's been a safeguarding concern, then yes, absolutely, I write everything down. So the paperwork isn't hugely a big thing. I keep records of, the sessions, the amount of sessions, my supervision, and my continued professional development work. So, but that's not every day. So it's not too bad on a daily basis. And because I run just myself, and the herd, rather than have other therapists come in, I don't have to, have paperwork for the care of the horses, or which horse can be done what with, or anything like that. So it's quite simple, and I really like it that way.
I don't blame you. That does sound preferable for sure. And just going back in time a bit to when you first went self-employed, started working for yourself, there's always a certain number of things that you need to put in place, like you mentioned insurance. And if you've never been self-employed before, I know I found this, it involves quite a bit of research and making sure that you've got everything that you need before you set out. And I think that can be quite scary, quite daunting, coming from a place where you're prepping, you're studying, you know what you want to do, and then suddenly it's like, oh, I've got to go into the big wide world and be self-employed. How did you find that process?
It's hard to remember. I think the idea of it was bigger for me than the actual practically doing it. Like, I think for a lot of people, in my experience, the idea of being self-employed is scarier than actually when you're doing it. It's like, your tax return, that sounds like this big, scary, awful thing. But then when you're actually doing it, it's like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. There's loads of bits in it that sound terrifying, really complicated. But usually most people don't have to fill those in. So, I think the worries that I hear a lot from people about being self-employed is having, a client basis, having the income, particularly if you're used to that regular income coming in. But I've found that over the years, there's things that you can do. So, for example, I use Sterling Bank. And they have like a bookkeeping add-on that you can pay for every month. And that breaks down everything into all your tax, your national insurance, where everything has come from. So say somebody is on universal credits, for example, if they're getting benefits as well as being self-employed, then you can just go on that. It gives you all the information that you need to input every month, and you've got it all. So that makes my life so much easier. So there's things that you can do that really help your business, as opposed to, you know, outsourcing it and paying an accountant or something. Like, I feel like it's really, it is manageable. You can do it yourself, even if you don't have a clue about, you know, doing your accounts, or, you know, things like that. Like, it can be broken down into ways that feel a lot more user friendly, and I'm not good with stuff like that. So it's been, you know, a learning curve.
Yeah, and sometimes doing that sort of thing yourself helps you understand your business better as well, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
I was interested if someone was speaking with you about starting up a business, is there anything in particular that you would recommend or advise them, you know, to make a start and to be successful with starting the business?
Yeah, I think there's so I know in Scotland we have a organisation called GrowBiz, and they help support people that are self-employed in businesses. So I think around the country there are organisations that do that for free, and they don't charge anything. So, like, kind of linking in with stuff like that, and like networking can be really helpful, because, like I'm doing here, like with sharing our experiences, that's how people can learn from it. So it's this big, massive, I don't know, ball of complexity when you're thinking about it. Oh, all of these things, it's overwhelming. But actually, when you talk to people about it, then you can learn from other people's experiences. So I think linking in, there's lots of like, I think there's a lot of like women's business networks, you know, popping up around the place. You know, there's various different niches, you know, and I think being able to have those conversations and not being scared to ask questions, because, you know, nobody comes into it knowing everything. And it's learning as you go. And in my experience, it's been, you know, even the agencies, you know, so like, you know, with the doing your accounts and stuff, like, people are really open to answering questions. You know, nobody expects you to know everything, even if it's presented like that. You know, that just being human about it, I think, is the best way.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Do you reckon there's anything you'd do different if you started again from scratch?
Oh, probably. I think it's kind of been an organic flow. So yes, on the one hand, you know, like, for example, I didn't have a toilet on site when I first started having client site. You know, that wasn't a huge thing, because there's places that people can go, and I was very explicit about it, they can go for a wild wee. But it was so nice to be able to have that in place. I actually managed to get funding to get a compost toilet on site. So that was really nice. So I kind of started before I had everything in place, you know, at the field. So I guess, would I do anything different? It would have been nice to have everything in place initially, but the learning curve of that, I think, has made me more confident. I liked what you said, Irene, about, you know, when you do it yourself, you do learn more about your business. So it's something that I know all aspects of. And I think the feeling of accomplishment in that, of having this kind of business entity growing alongside, you know, the herd flourishing on the land, and, you know, all of that stuff, it feels like part of it. There's a kind of felt sense around it, which feels really important for me. I think if I just stepped into it and it was like this shiny, perfect thing, the feeling would have been different.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. It's and actually it's kind of like life as a whole, isn't it? The mistakes that we make, and we all make them. But they do serve as a kind of a source of growth, don't they?
Absolutely, yes.
So yeah, no, I can see where that would work. Irene, were you about to say something and I jumped in?
No. Go ahead. Go ahead if you've got anything. If not, I've got lots I'd like to ask Naomi, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you go ahead. You go ahead. I think, yeah, we've both got quite a few questions.
Yeah,
go ahead.
fascinating. It's really fascinating. We've talked a lot about the plus side of running our own business. what have you found? Have you found any negative aspects? For instance, possibly advertising, social media. Maybe that's not something that you need to be involved with. I don't know, but I think it's quite useful when you're starting up a business to be able to be aware of what could be more challenging, and I wonder what you've found more challenging when you've been getting a business going.
Yes, absolutely. I think income gaps, I think, is an issue. And for me, it's taking breaks. So, I'm not hugely business minded in that, I'm a therapist because I want to help people. It's not for me. This is, that I'm going to earn money and this is how I'm going to do it. Of course, I need money to live, but that's not my primary drive. So the having the business head has been a learning edge for me. So yeah, there's been considerations of pricing, for example, to include cancellations, and when clients are on holiday, there's breaks, or when I'm on holiday. So I had to raise my prices to incorporate that, and to incorporate the equine care and all of those things. And that's been challenging for me, because it's I would love everybody to be able to access the therapy that they need across the board for free, but that's not how it works. So it's still uncomfortable for me. It doesn't sit entirely well, but it is it's necessary. And I think the other part is you mentioned social media. I think there's a lot of pressure about marketing and presenting in a certain way. Again, I'm not brilliant at pretending to be something that I'm not. And the biggest thing I have learned is that when I am more authentically myself, that's when I am busier. So in my marketing, in my website, in my social media, I am just myself. So instead of trying to, come across as this polished person, I'll do videos, for example, from the field, and I'll have mud on my face, and the horses are in the background, and I'll be speaking about stuff, and I don't pre-rehearse it. I'm just sharing what's coming into my mind. And I found that seems to resonate most with people. And obviously in what I do is about connection. It's about being human. It's about that relationship. So the more that I can show of myself, the more I feel that clients know what they're going to get. So that then they're making contact and they're saying, actually, I want to work with you, they have an idea of who I am. And I think it's not just in the therapy context that's important. I think, when I'm looking for somebody, an equine professional to come and work with my herd, I really want to know who that person is. I want to know what their values are. I want to know how they might feel, how they might interact with the herd before I'm asking them to come. Because otherwise, say it's a physio or, equine podiatrist or whatever that might be, you're trying to create these long-term relationships. And actually, if it doesn't make a fit, then it's just wasted everybody's time. So, I think being real and honest in your marketing and showing more of yourself is the best way.
I have to say that kind of element there that you've just shared, if I'd have heard that advice when I started my business, that would have helped me so enormously. It really would, and I think this is, like you're saying earlier, you find out as you go along. But I kind of, as a body worker, I follow others, and obviously there's some quite big names, and you look at these posts and it's full of facts and it's all scientific, and obviously that's the basis of our work in terms of the anatomy and what have you. But it did make me feel like, oh my God, social media, I have to do it, but I have to be putting out all this information. But everybody's heard that. Let me think of something else. And it was like, what shall I write? And then I actually had a conversation with Kate Blackmore, and she said to me, why don't you put a post up of you and your dog out on a walk? And it's not about what you do. It's not about the horses, but it's about you. That shows who is Kate, who is she when she's not at work, and what does she do, and what does her dog look like? And the engagement, when I started looking at it like that, grew. And you know, the majority of my posts are about my work, but occasionally I put in something else. And I think what you just said there would have been so powerful. I think it will help people listening if they're just starting out, because it's a minefield, and I think it's a scary place.
Absolutely. But I think it becomes like, as you said, like that pressure of like presenting in a certain way and having like I don't know, something to get that engagement, you know, finding just the right way of saying something. But actually, you know, I think what we actually want is connection, and what we want is humanness, you know. So yes, of course, you know, evidence-based scientific research and data, all of that is super important. But if you are getting a service, you also want to know what the person is, you know. For me, I am so much more likely to engage somebody if I have a feel for them. And you know, when you're looking at that marketing, it can then feel like, oh, I've got to do this. Oh, you know, how am I going to do this? And it's such a barrier. If it's just sharing about yourself and about your passions and just speaking about what you're passionate about, then it becomes easy. So for me now, I don't schedule Facebook posts. I don't do anything like that. For me, it is a case of, okay, when something is coming up for me, I'll just share. So yesterday I was at the field. The river had been up. We have a beautiful river that goes past, and it gives us a bit of beach sometimes, but it also like comes right up. So you kind of don't get any beach. But yesterday it had gone down, so I was just exploring the space, seeing what had changed, and I saw something in the river, and I thought, oh, I'm going to film this. I think it might be a newt, and I was really excited because I get super excited about these things. And actually, after I filmed it, it was an eel, which are really rare and endangered, and I was just really excited about it. Of course, nothing to do with the horses whatsoever, but in the therapy that I do, it's about the space as well, it's about the environment. So I thought, oh, I'm so excited about this, I'm going to share this on my page. So I did, and it's had like loads of engagement. Other people are really excited about it, and it's lovely, you know. So that spark of joy that it gave me, being able to share that. So it's not always about that, you know, bringing clients in or, you know, kind of trying to sell yourself. It's just, for me at least, it's about that sharing, and then that, you know, that goes further. And, you know, if that inspires somebody else, or, you know, changes something, or, you know, makes somebody else's day better, then that feels like it's more wholesome than just about, you know, trying to make a sale or, you know, get more clients in.
Yeah, that passion that you've talked about is so essential, isn't it? When you're wanting to run a business, when you're running a business or setting up a business, having a passion for what you want to offer.
Yes.
And to be able to engage that and put that across to people, so they understand where you're coming from, you know, is absolutely fundamental, because this is something that you want to spend a good proportion of your life doing.
Absolutely.
But I think when you're, particularly maybe when you're younger and you've not had so much experience with people or in the business world, confidence can be a big thing, and or lack of confidence, and kind of the not knowing, and I'm wondering if there have been any strategies that you've put in place that have either helped you with confidence, or maybe that you have just thought would be useful that you could share with us for others.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when I trained, my initial training, my psychotherapy training, I was the youngest person on the cohort, and it was a thing. You know, I was, just over 30. And it was, you know, oh, well, people want, you know, clients want older people that have had life experience. So I was really underconfident then. I also didn't know I was autistic then either. So there was a lot of stuff going on there for me. I'm not great in big groups. I'm not fantastic socially. You know, I'm great when I'm talking about the things that I love, and, you know, when those roles are really explicit. But, you know, if I was talking in a social setting, it doesn't work so well. So for me, that confidence wasn't there. And I was constantly doubting myself. Okay, so people won't want to speak to me because actually, you know, they want somebody older that they can, you know, see and I think that has more life experience. But I think just as I went along, the more support I got, so I have a supervisor, and also, you know, through doing the courses, you know, you have your own therapy as well. You know, I realized that the more me I can be, the more helpful I can be to other people. So I think my journey in that has been about connecting with other people too and having that support. And then being able to, you know, go into those parts of vulnerability. And that's not easy. You know, that's not easy for anybody. I'm not going to sit here pretend it's easy for me at all times. It's not. But I think when you can do that, when you do start to do that, if you've got the right supports around you, then that's when the confidence, authentic kind of confidence comes, that you're not second guessing yourself all the time. And it's hard, you know, the world is hard and people are not always good or kind, and particularly in the business world or the horse world, you know, it's a really tough place. So I think having that, knowing why you're doing something and doing it to the best of your ability is the most important part. So I had a situation where my horses are kept on a track system. It's not a surface track system, and they have various health conditions, meaning that they can't be on grass. So I do the best I possibly can, and sometimes it looks like a mud swamp. You know, they always have a dry place to be, you know, a sandbank, they've got mud mats, you know, it's okay. But from somebody looking in, it could be really like terrible. And I had a situation where the SSPCA were called, and I only found out about it. They didn't contact me because they were happy. They looked at the horses, they were happy, there were no problems. But I was really worried about this. I was really concerned, like, oh, how could somebody think this? You know, I really want to invite them down, see the space. So I could have kept all of this under wraps, but instead I chose to put it on my social media, be explicit about it, share the photos, share the experience, invite anybody that had concerns to come and see. Because for me, you know, there's something about that that could have turned into self-doubt. You know, am I doing the right thing? Oh, I can't invite clients here, this is terrible, you know, somebody's seeing this, is whatever. So instead I just decided to open it wide open. I know that I am doing the best thing I possibly can. I know that I have done all of the research and continue to do research. You know, there'll always be better ways of doing things. But being able to be clear about that and then open it up. So there's that kind of edge of something going into vulnerability, or it could go into shame. And for me, going into that vulnerability then helps develop that confidence, that openness. And then if anybody has issues, then they can come and we can talk about it. They can come and see the space and we can, you know, go into it. But I think there's often a choice that we have of, okay, oh, I'm not feeling good about this. Are these people thinking this stuff about me? And if we don't, if we're not able to open that up and lean into it, then it can grow inside us as, you know, feeling insecure and doubting ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's very wise. You know, that's a really good conversation, a really useful conversation to have, because there are certainly times that you do feel vulnerable. Yeah, and there are certainly times where it would be much easier to put something in a box and shut the lid than to actually address it. Yeah. And maybe that's where having a safe space where you can have a conversation with other people who might not be in quite the same, have quite the same role that you do, but understand the challenges that you face. You know, it's just so valuable to have that opportunity. Yes. And as you say, in the horse world, it's very mixed. Yes. And you're lucky if you have that opportunity to be able to have these discussions with people in a safe space who you trust. Yes. And I suppose this isn't really a question, but it's recognizing what you've said, and that there is a lack of these safe spaces sometimes, particularly when people are fairly new and haven't developed those friendships or those kinships with people who who understand where you're coming from.
Yes, and I don't have that in person around where I am. That for me has been my who I trained with. I trained with the Herd Institute, and they're absolutely fantastic, and they have that community. So they have a space that you can go and you can talk about these things, which is so helpful. And IEP is like that. Like being able to develop that community and have these conversations in a space where somebody's not going to come in and be mean. There's always ways that we can do things differently, but the way that we present that, if we say it with gentleness, with kindness, with curiosity, then we can change things for the better. So I think it's particularly in the horse world, I always say that I'm not a horsey person. Clients come and say, look, I don't keep my horses in a traditional way. I never have, and this is I'm different from that. I grew up in livery yards, and a lot of different stuff going on, and it never felt right. I in fact hated horses when I first encountered them, because it was my sister was riding at riding schools, and it just didn't feel right. There was something that was off for me. Horses were not, I don't know, an animal that felt, I don't know, safe would be the word I would use. There was a lot of tension there, and it wasn't until years later that I realized that it's because of their environmental conditions. They weren't feeling safe. So these things are really important, but when you do something differently, as I believe that most people or if not everybody in the IEP kind of community do, you are sticking your neck out, and people don't like it when people do things differently. Even if you're not saying anything against them, it can be experienced as a judgment, and it can be experienced as you're doing something wrong. And then you can have kind of animosity back towards you. And that is really hard. It's so hard to be doing something differently, to, particularly when it's about equine welfare, when you're having that at the center, that that's why you're doing things. But the human stuff, the social stuff, can be really difficult. And I think for me, it's maybe a bit easier, weirdly, because I'm autistic. So it's like, well, yeah, I don't get the social stuff anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So, but I think for people that, do have that need to, be in those social circles, that could be a big pull, right? Do you go with your ethics? Do you go with, being accepted? That's really challenging.
Oh, it's such a big challenge. And I'm just listening to you talk, it's kind of just occurring to me that, we all tend to have human clients as well as working with equines, but with what you do, I guess there's a lot of responsibility. You could go down the road of fear of judgment of both on the horse side, what you're doing with your horses, and also with your human clients. How do you kind of, when you close your day off, are you able to then shut your mental doorway to your work? Are you able to turn off, or is that very difficult?
That's been something that's changed over time. When I first started, the client work would be in my head, at all times, and that was very hard. I work in a very intuitive way and a very felt way. So I feel if clients are feeling something, I can feel it in my body, and that's part of the magic of how I work, and something that is really beneficial. But it's also been learning for me of how to manage that. So now, yes, I always think about my clients, because I'm in a relationship with them. For me, it's not that, I see them for that hour and a half, whatever. I don't think of them. I do, I have love and care for them. That continues, that relational stuff still continues, but it doesn't, it's not heavy in a way. There will be situations that will be heavier. If clients are going through really difficult things, yep, that's still there. But I find that for me, having that space with the horses really helps. So I kind of think of my work, and I had a colleague that I was speaking to, and I said such and such, I was, worked part-time, and they're like, well, hang on a minute. Think about all the equine stuff that you do, and you need to do that for your work. So you do not work part-time, you work full-time hours. It's just that you only see clients part-time. I was like, that's interesting. Yes. But because,
true.
yeah. So if I'm thinking about the client stuff, no, I can kind of park that, and I've got ways of doing that, supervision and various different strategies that I use. But the equine stuff, I mean, I think that's all pervasive. I'm always kind of thinking about my horses, and if there's something wrong, I've got some kind of veterans in my herd, and I'm constantly like, okay, what do I need to do for them? But that stuff for me is joyful. So I think because it brings me so much joy to be with them, to look after them, to even doing the land management stuff, I love it. So that is, it doesn't feel like work, if that makes sense.
It does 100% make sense, yeah. And it's sometimes I know I've found myself feeling, like, going back to what you were saying earlier a little bit, but guilty for being paid to do it, because I don't think of my work as a job. I just absolutely adore it, and it's just like, really. But at the end of the day, yes, it is work. But I totally see what you mean about, yeah.
And I think that's the beauty of being able to be self-employed, that you can choose to do something that you love. Yes, there's going to be aspects of that, like you said, the paperwork, or whatever that might be in the work that is, like, I hate updating my website. I've got a beautiful new logo, and I've still not put it on my website because I really don't like doing that stuff. But it'll happen when it happens. It's fine. I would far rather be out there in the field poo picking. So there's parts that will not be as fun, but if you are doing what you love, then that is the biggest reward of it. And if there's struggles, being able to have that network, that community, knowing where you can go, even if you just write it down, even if you don't go to any of the meetings, or access the network stuff, having a written list, so that if you start struggling, you go, okay, that's what I need to do. That can be really helpful. So having those strategies in place to support you in your business, can make the biggest difference.
And what you've alluded to there as well is that we put a lot out when we're working. We put a lot of ourselves out there, but having something to feed you, to bring something back in. And as you were saying, the joy of being with your horse family, and that relationship with them.
Yes.
When you're putting yourself out there for your human clients, and obviously you'll get, it's a circle, you get stuff back from them too, but to be able to spend that time and that non-judgmental, unpressured time with your horses really feeds you again. It helps to kind of revive you, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's really interesting, because one of my biggest fears about starting doing this work, the equine work, was, how am I going to share my horses with clients? I was so worried about how I would feel in that kind of relationship space. And actually, it's one of the things that brings me the biggest joy, because I know my horses in relationship with me. Now I get to see them in relationship with other people, and I'm learning so much more about my horses because of it. So it's like I've got, I had this one window that I could look through, and now I've got like multifaceted windows that I can look through all the time, and seeing their different personalities, like stuff I have never seen my horses do, they will do with individual clients, and it blows my mind. And it's like, it deepens all of those relationships. So instead of it feeling like, okay, there's just this, it's static, it grows. And I guess for other equine professionals in whatever, you're learning more about maybe other people's horses, if you're a body worker or whatever you're doing, but then you're learning more about yours as well at the same time. And I think that is just so powerful. So if we can tap into that, then even if it's like pouring with rain, even if, we're, the business is slow, or, there's something else that's growing alongside that can be part of that focus.
Mm-hmm.
So powerful, isn't it? That, just listening to what you're saying there, that is so powerful. And actually gives you the opportunity on a daily basis, or even an hourly basis, to change perspective.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's really, I can see how that would happen, actually, but very fascinating from an observation point of view of your own horses, as you say.
Honestly, it has blown my mind, and something I definitely did not anticipate. But I think, having a business is quite dry. The idea of, having your own business can be quite dry and cold. But see, if it is about, a relationship with people and horses as well, there's something else that grows. So, I think holding both of those things, and I think there's a privilege of that in, in any businesses that includes animals, because instead of the focus just being on income and overheads and all of that stuff, it can be focused in a relational way too. And I think that's the stuff that keeps people going when things are tough. So being able to identify that and acknowledge that and speak about that can almost be like life-saving for businesses, when they are going through difficult times.
Yeah, interesting. And it's I guess being empathetic, as we all tend to be when we're working with animals and people that we care about. I mean, there's pluses and minuses to that, but I think the pluses definitely outweigh, don't they? And just, I've got friends who have fabulous jobs and they've done so well in their careers, and they're paid well for it, and it's great. And I don't have much money, but I do know that when I get up in the morning, I'm never going to think, oh, I've got to go to work today.
Yes.
And I know that those people sometimes do have to go through that, because their passion for their job is perhaps not the same as mine, yours, Irene's. So we are privileged. We're lucky, aren't we?
Yes, and it is really hard because if you're in an employed position, then people can see your progression. If you've got your own business, you're not getting that feedback, that validation externally in the same way. You're not having your, what do they call them, your yearly appraisals, or things like that. You kind of just on your own with it. So yes, you can feel that inner stuff, but sometimes we all need some external validation, and that can be really difficult to get. And some people go from being, I know people that are equine facilitated psychotherapists as well, and they grow their business and they have other people coming in and all of that. For me, it's way too complex. That adds in so much more admin and so much more of the stuff I do not enjoy. So I'm very clear that actually this is what I want to do. I'm not interested in getting bigger and having more facilities or bringing more people in. I like it being the size that it is. That's intentional for me. So I think knowing what you want and then being able to create the life that you want around that I guess might serve as some of that validation. So remembering that, as you say, waking up and being like, oh, I love doing what I'm doing. I might not have enough money. I might not have, all of the flashy stuff, but that is more important. And I think in the world that we live in now, it's so capitalist driven. It's all about money and what you have. And it's hard to always validate ourselves in what we value, or even identify what we value, because social media and everything else just hits us. So being able to kind of find that core, be like, right, well, what do I want my life to look like? Is it the achievements? Is it the external validation and all of that stuff, or is it doing something that you love, that you don't need a holiday from, that you're that you wake up in the morning and you're like, yes, this is what I want to do today. Of course, we all need to eat and we all need to, pay rent and mortgage and everything else. But if you can do that and have the joy in your work, then that is priceless, I think.
Yeah, happy days. And I think I would guess that all of us, whatever we do in whatever specific niche we have, seeing the difference in another being's life as a result of your work, and I'll put that in inverted commas, is priceless, isn't it? And it's Irene, with the people and the horses that you work with, and from a behavior point of view and a riding point of view, and Naomi, what you do with people and horses, and I know I do. It's, you can't put a financial label on that, can you? A price on it.
and the reverberations, you know, in all of this. So, you know, it's I always think about it, it's like waves. You know, you throw a pebble in water, and you know there's these waves that go out and go out and go out. And you know, even if it's in a behavior way, if it's, you know, with what you're doing with the body work, you know, with humans and the horses, like the impact that has isn't always immediately apparent, you know, but just by the sharing of it, just by, you know, all of it, it is impacting in our world in a positive way. And I love that. And I love that there's people out there doing that and choosing to do that, because it is an intentional choice to do this work, to be a sole trader, to start up these businesses, you know, and that feels really, I don't know, there's a connection. It's almost like all these little lights are out there somewhere. It's like trying to make a difference, and I think it does.
This has been so valuable, Naomi. Thank you. It's been such a wonderful conversation, and what a brilliant conversation to start our podcasts with.
Yeah, so pleased with that. So, Naomi, where can people find out more about you and about what you do?
Yep. So I have a website, b-counselling.org.uk or com. I am not even sure. See, I'm so good at the marketing and the business stuff. I'm also on Facebook at b.counselling and b.herd. I am currently full for clients, and this is the other part, that, you know, that even when you get to a place of I guess, you know, you at capacity, I still like to share stuff. You know, it's still the motivation for just that income isn't the primary part, and I think this is the case for so many people that I meet in this sector, is that, you know, in the equine sector, is that we do it because we love it, as we've said. So yeah, you can find me on social media. I post stuff about my horses, my herd, stuff about being autistic, lots of different kind of stuff there, and yeah, that's where I am. And I'm also on Psychology Today. That's another good place to find therapists and stuff.
Oh, fabulous. That's so good to be. I have dipped into that from time to time. It's such a good resource. Yeah. Yes. But I'm sure people will look you up on there. And just to clarify, I've just quickly tabbed out just to check, but your website is b-counselling.com.
Thank you.
So just for anybody who is, there you go. Every day is a school day now, yeah.
Yep. You know, people ask me these questions, I'm like, I've got no idea. I'm so good at this stuff.
I know, I've had that before, and people have said about Facebook, and I think, well, I don't know how do I point people to my Facebook? I don't know what it's called. It's just on there.
It's just there somewhere. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed speaking to you both, and yeah, it's brought me a lot of joy being able to speak about, you know, the things I love to do, and yeah, it's encouraged a lot of reflection as well on my journey. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Great. Oh, that's such good news, and thank you, Naomi, for joining us on our first episode. So you have christened the IEP podcast series there. And it has been a pleasure. I think there'll be lots of reflection in there for all of us and for listeners as well. So I'm sure it'll be super useful. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Naomi.
So, running your own equine business has many challenges, but equally, as we've heard, many rewards. We'll be sticking with this subject to find out perspectives from two more very different niche areas. Louise Napthine of Why Do Horses is going to talk to us about her behaviour and enrichment-focused work, and Helen Gilbert will join us to discuss self-employment in the world of equine massage and bodywork. Links and resources where mentioned from each podcast will be posted on our public Facebook page, which is at IEP Global. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, which we'd love, please join our closed Facebook group, which is Friends of IEP. If you do this, please remember to answer the questions just so that we can approve your requests swiftly. Until then, thank you for listening to Equilogue.